Welcome to the debate. Our discussion today centers on, well, the relationship between consumption and genuine autonomy. And it's drawn from the foundational text, The Buy Nothing Rebellion for Financial Freedom. The author presents a truly radical proposition that modern consumption isn't just, a drain on wealth, but actually a systematic form of financial enslavement.
Yeah, a strong claim.
It is. And the central tension here, I think, is whether achieving financial freedom in what the author terms intentional living requires this kind of philosophical rebellion, a complete break from consumer culture. Or is this radical approach maybe too restrictive? Does it confuse necessary financial discipline with perhaps unnecessary austerity? My view is that only this explicit radical rejection can really break the deep psychological conditioning that holds most people captive.
And I suppose my position, well, I believe we need to frame this debate more around sustainability. While I absolutely agree the material brilliantly diagnoses the problem, the corrosive nature of debt and status seeking, I really question if the only viable path to long-term independence demands this absolute sort of blanket rejection. My position is that intentional living is built on conscious financial control, mastering cash payment, and strategic purchasing, rather than adopting what might be a very rigid model of self-denial for everyone.
Okay, so to begin, I think we have to recognize the architecture of the trap itself. The financial system, it's expertly designed to equate continuous consumption with personal progress, with success even. And if you just try to, let's say, manage your way out of that, you're constantly fighting against this powerful cultural current. True freedom, therefore, it requires a fundamental philosophical rebellion, especially in the areas where the trap is strongest, these high-cost, depreciating liabilities. The author is, I think, most definitive when discussing what they call indenture servitude. I mean, think about the typical car loan. We're talking about an average new vehicle costing, over $50,000 now? That generates a monthly payment that acts as a real financial anchor for years, $600, $700, maybe $750 month after month. The rebellion demands you reject this anchor completely.
True wealth, as the author puts it, is owned quietly in assets, not worn publicly as some kind of status symbol. So refusing to upgrade a perfectly functional, paid-for, say, 2007 Toyota Camry isn't simply being frugal. It is a clear, decisive vote for autonomy. Because if you maintain those anchors, you really do remain psychologically and financially enslaved.
Okay, look, I can't argue with the fundamental fact that debt finance liabilities, especially big ones like vehicle loans, represent just crushing financial opportunity costs. I mean, no credible expert disagrees on the toxicity of that specific scenario. That's clear. But when we pivot from the toxicity of debt specifically to a mandatory rejection of all non-essential consumption, even when it's paid for in cash, well, that's where the model for me risks becoming potentially unsustainable and maybe overly prescriptive. My core issue is with the universality of this rejection premise. The goal is independence, right? Which means conscious allocation of resources. So is refusing, say, food delivery or specific types of clothing truly a meaningful step toward building significant wealth compared to, allocating that $750 a month car payment toward index funds instead? Or is it maybe more of an exercise in self-reliance that could, potentially, distract from tackling the core liabilities? Intentional living, as I see it, is really about conscious control. It's about prioritizing cash payment for everything. The problem isn't necessarily the item or the service itself. It's the financing. It's what the author rightly calls the financial hangovers that result from buying luxury or even convenience on borrowed money. If the cash is genuinely available and the purchase is made mindfully, control remains intact, doesn't it?
You use the term control, but I'd argue that control is often illusory if the societal structures themselves are constantly subtly eroding your self-discipline. And this is precisely why the rebellion, in my view, must be absolute in certain key areas, especially around status symbols. Society relentlessly pushes us to appear wealthy rather than be wealthy. And this leads directly to individuals who are, frankly, financially drowning but looking good doing it. So this isn't just about debt management. It's about a much deeper psychological anchoring. Status symbols, by their nature, force you to tether your personal peace, your sense of self-worth even, to external validation. The rebellion demands the complete abandonment of this external validation, precisely because it is fundamentally incompatible with the Stoic principles of quiet ownership and true independence the author cherishes. Status demands continuous maintenance, continuous spending. It doesn't pay the bills, it doesn't buy peace, and it certainly doesn't grant the kind of freedom we're discussing.
Okay, if we accept that the pursuit of debt finance status is indeed a psychological anchor that undermines true wealth, and I think we largely agree on that, let's explore whether that automatically means all non-essential items must be rejected regardless of how they're acquired. The focus surely should be on divorcing self-worth from consumption, not necessarily from ownership itself. I mean, if someone has built significant assets, they're financially secure, and they choose to purchase a quality, maybe aesthetically pleasing item, let's say a piece of art or a high-end watch, something they value, with cash, is that truly an impediment to their financial freedom? Many items, sometimes labeled status symbols, might actually be non-depreciating assets, or at least quality goods designed to last for decades. This rebellion framework, I worry, risks confusing necessary quality, or even just aesthetic appreciation, with that corrosive validation-seeking behavior. Can't a conscious, debt-free consumer acquire beautiful or non-essential things without compromising their financial independence? It seems to me the battle is against the need for external affirmation and the reliance on debt, not necessarily against every single item that exists outside the category of bare necessity.
I'm still not entirely convinced that line of reasoning holds up against the relentless psychological pressure of the market. Because even without debt, consumption creates a different, maybe deeper financial drain through the constant pressure to upgrade. And this takes us directly to what the author calls the upgrade trap and the whole engineered cycle of plant obsolescence. Corporations absolutely perpetuate the cycle. They require endless, incremental payments for often minor improvements, consuming not just our capital, but also our mental bandwidth. The author's rejection of the newest technology, stating, "I don't need another lens on my camera," is more than just a cost-saving measure. It's intended as a powerful act of rebellion against manufactured desire. Refusing the upgrade means refusing the system that's designed to keep your mind perpetually focused on the next payment or the next purchase, rather than on, say, productive work or simply peace of mind. Only that kind of radical rejection, I believe, delivers the mental clarity and freedom from what I might call decision fatigue, related purely to consumption choices.
That's a compelling point about the psychological toll of chasing novelty. I grant you that. But we must distinguish, I think, between novelty seeking purely for its own sake and strategic upgrades for efficiency. Focusing solely on rejecting the upgrade trap could inadvertently lead us into what we might call the austerity trap. While constant novelty is definitely wasteful, strategic technology purchases, when paid for in cash, can sometimes significantly increase efficiency and actually reduce the long-term total cost of ownership, the TCO. Consider, for example, a professional who purchases an expensive, maybe high-efficiency software suite outright versus constantly relying on older, slower tools that require workarounds. That one-time cash investment could reduce operational friction, free up valuable time that can then be redirected toward higher value, perhaps wealth-generating activities. So is the rebellion against all enhanced functionality, even if it improves life or work, or is it primarily against non-functional novelty? It seems to me that intentional living might actually require us to purchase efficiency when it's truly warranted, not just cling to basic functionality purely for the sake of philosophical rejection.
But the rebellion's core mandate, as I read it, is to reclaim agency. And that means confronting the insidious erosion of self-reliance that's fostered by convenience culture. Which brings us, inevitably, to the author's most, let's say, confrontational example: the refusal of food delivery. The author explicitly calls ordering food that is easily within walking distance lazy inflation and waste disguised as convenience. Think about it. It's paying a premium, not just a delivery fee itself, but the service fee, the inflated menu prices, sometimes the tip, all for the privilege of doing less.
The true cost isn't just the, say, $5 delivery fee. It's the habit it reinforces, the habit of paying others to solve immediately solvable basic daily problems. The philosophical core here is about reclaiming self-reliance, challenging the listener directly. Grow your own food or get your own food. This daily discipline, this small act, is where autonomy is reclaimed, proving you have the agency to manage your own life without constantly relying on expensive, manufactured ease.
Okay, I understand the philosophical grounding there, that every act of self-reliance can be seen as a vote for autonomy. I get that. However, I do have to challenge the actual financial impact and, maybe more importantly, the scalability of this specific rejection. Conceding that yes, paying for convenience when proximity is high is obviously inefficient, but I'm sorry, I just don't buy that this minor daily act of self-denial is somehow essential to the core mission of achieving financial independence. We risk focusing our valuable intellectual and emotional energy on avoiding a, $5 transaction rather than aggressively managing a $50,000 liability or optimizing a six-figure investment portfolio. Intentional living arguably should also optimize time. And if the time saved by occasional, cash-based convenience allows a financially independent person to redirect that hour of energy toward exercise, family, relationships, or high-value wealth-building activities, is the forced self-denial in that instance truly necessary or even beneficial? If the rebellion requires such granular daily austerity, how sustainable is it really for the average person striving for freedom? Or is this framework maybe only truly feasible for those who already possess significant financial optionality? It feels like it might confuse symbolic resistance with genuinely effective strategy.
I'd argue the effectiveness lies precisely in changing the behavior, not just maximizing the immediate savings on a spreadsheet. The systemic trap is built on layers of manufactured desire and easy convenience that actively erode discipline over time. So the act of rebellion, rejecting the big things like the car loan and luxury debt, yes, but also the engineered upgrade cycle and even the lazy inflation of constant convenience, it functions as a kind of psychological prerequisite for achieving that genuine freedom. You simply cannot maintain those ingrained behavioral habits and expect to find serenity or true independence. You have to consciously reject the structure, much of it entirely, to secure the peace of mind that comes from knowing you owe no one and depend on no unnecessary service.
Look, I absolutely agree that discipline and intentionality are the non-negotiable foundations for financial autonomy. The text correctly identifies, quite powerfully, that every dollar withheld from meaningless consumption is a vote for freedom. However, I maintain that the path to sustained freedom likely requires mastery and control, paying cash, rigorously prioritizing assets, and crucially, avoiding the major financial hangovers, rather than strictly adhering to a universally rigid stance of self-denial that might not suit everyone. Intentional living, for many, surely must be balanced, focusing squarely on minimizing liabilities and maximizing asset growth, while still allowing for some controlled, debt-free enjoyment of the present. Well, we have certainly found convergence on the absolute value of restraint and achieving financial autonomy. That's clear. Absolutely. And the material, regardless of which path one prefers, powerfully illuminates the illusion of status and the profound danger of debt. Ultimately, I think it presents the listener with two fairly clear paths towards freedom. One through a kind of radical, explicit rebellion and a deep psychological break from consumer culture, and the other through perhaps more balanced, sustainable, and intentional financial control. Both models champion independence, certainly, but the optimal implementation of true freedom, well, that remains an open question for each listener's unique journey, I suppose.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive, where we take the sources you share with us and turn them into actionable insights and strategic knowledge. Today, we are cracking open a set of sources that frame personal finance not just as, accounting, but almost as activism. Our mission is to dive deep into what the sources dramatically call the Buy Nothing Rebellion.
It sounds pretty radical, doesn't it? A rebellion.
It does, a complete rejection of the consumer ethos, it seems. But the principles underneath, when you dig in, they seem deeply rational and really focused on pure autonomy.
That's the key, I think, autonomy.
So, what does it truly mean to rebel against this constant grinding pressure to spend? The central tension explored across all the source material is this crushing cycle that seems to define modern economic life for so many: earning, spending, and owing.
Right, that treadmill.
Exactly. And the author argues we're fundamentally misled, confusing two really dangerous concepts. We mistake consumption with progress, and maybe even worse, convenience with success. We buy more stuff, we must be advancing, right? That's the thinking.
That's the cultural script we're handed, yeah.
So this deep dive is about meticulously challenging that widely accepted premise.
Exactly. We're going to be extracting the core nuggets of insight from this whole philosophy, which really places personal autonomy and intentional living above everything else. This approach views financial freedom as, well, almost a prerequisite for any meaningful life choices.
A prerequisite. That's strong.
It is, because it's not just about budgeting, like you said. It's framed as structural liberation, ensuring that your time and your effort benefit you first.
Rather than a bank or some big company.
Precisely. Rather than a creditor or a large corporation pushing the next must-have thing.
Okay, that sets the stage really well for the philosophical core of this rebellion itself. Section 1, then, establishes the stark choice the author presents. It's freedom versus what they call financial enslavement.
What's fascinating right off the bat is the positioning. Like we said, the author isn't really promoting just being frugal or cheap. They are championing a liberation movement.
Liberation.
Yeah. Defining the rebellion starts with this core idea that the ultimate goal isn't, a better credit score or a full emergency fund.
Yeah.
Those are good things, tactical steps.
Right. Tools,
exactly. The strategic goal is financial freedom, pure and simple. Every single intentional choice, especially the choice not to spend, is seen as flowing directly from that core mandate.
But hang on a second. The sources frame this as a full-blown rebellion. That sounds, well, quite radical. Is this approach truly feasible for someone who's already deep in the middle-class struggle?
That's a really critical question.
Maybe living in a high cost of living area, or is this advice mainly for, say, high earners who just lack basic discipline?
It's a fair question, and the sources do anticipate it. They argue that this rebellion is actually most necessary for those who are struggling.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Precisely because the system, as they see it, is often designed to keep people dependent. The biggest obstacle, according to these sources, isn't necessarily a low income, but this pervasive conditioning. We are just relentlessly conditioned, really from childhood onward, to view perpetual consumption and the debt that fuels it as the essential marker of success.
You definitely see that conditioning when people get a raise, right? The immediate impulse isn't always pay down debt or invest the difference.
No, it's upgrade.
It's upgrade. A better job means a bigger house, a nicer car, and, subsequently a higher monthly burden. We're told culturally that we've earned the upgrade.
You deserve it.
They deserve the indulgence, yeah.
And that right there is precisely where this idea of financial enslavement takes hold. If you break down consumer debt, especially that high-interest installment debt, it fundamentally creates dependency. Those constant, non-negotiable monthly payments mean you are structurally tied to your current income, your current job. Even if that job is, frankly, emotionally draining or maybe even harmful to your well-being.
You lose options.
You sacrifice your optionality, exactly. The moment you introduce those debt obligations, your choices narrow. Think of it this way. The author views every dollar spent on non-essential stuff, particularly depreciating goods, as a lost opportunity.
Not just the cash itself.
Not just lost cash, but lost time. You had to work a certain number of hours to earn that dollar, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that dollar then goes towards servicing a debt obligation for something that buys you no long-term asset, no real freedom, you're essentially dedicating hours of your future self to pay for your past choices.
Wow. So the author's arguing that every single consumer choice is basically a vote.
A vote. That's a great way to put it.
You're either casting a vote for your personal autonomy, your long-term sovereignty, or you're voting for continued financial dependency on lenders and maybe income streams you actually despise.
Absolutely. And if we want to talk numbers that really hit home for you listening, the source material focuses heavily on the concept of opportunity cost.
Okay, let's hear it.
This is the profound implication that the casual spender often misses. It's not just the money you spent on, say, that fancy coffee or that subscription you forgot about. It's the potential compounding growth you sacrificed by not investing that money instead.
Can you walk us through a quick hypothetical on that just to make it concrete?
Sure, certainly. Let's say you're consistently spending maybe $500 a month on non-essential consumption. Could be upgrades, status items, convenience fees, a mix of things.
Okay.
If you instead invested that $500 every month, pretty conservatively, let's say over a 20-year period, assuming maybe a moderate 7% growth rate,
Right.
you would easily be looking at a portfolio worth over $260,000
$250,000 just from $500 a month.
just from redirecting that spending. That's the true cost of that dependency, according to this view. You're potentially giving up $250,000 in future freedom just for immediate, often fleeting gratification.
That puts it in perspective.
So the goal of the rebellion, therefore, is independence and, crucially, peace of mind. And that's achieved by replacing that need for external validation with internal self-discipline.
It feels like the ultimate shift in power, really. Moving the locus of control entirely inward. You're basically declaring that your resources, your time, your money are dedicated to your long-term peace,
Right.
not to maintaining some costly performance for the outside world.
Exactly. It's taking back control.
Okay, let's move from the high-level philosophy to the practical battleground, starting with the biggest financial anchors in most people's lives. Section 2 is all about declaring independence from those major big-ticket liabilities that just instantly compromise financial freedom.
Makes sense. Start big.
And the first major declaration of independence is rejecting car payments and the sheer cultural obsession with buying new vehicles. This is where the rebellion gets extremely specific and data-driven.
Yeah, this is a really necessary starting point because the car purchase is often the most socially acceptable form of what the author sees as financially destructive behavior.
Socially acceptable, that's key.
Totally. And the source material hits you immediately with that defining data point. The average price for a new vehicle in the U.S. now stands at over $50,000.
$50,000, wow.
And the author is crystal clear. That expense is not an asset. It is a rapidly depreciating liability packaged and sold to us as some kind of necessity or status symbol.
The sources are incredibly blunt here. They label the financing of new cars as a form of indentured servitude.
Strong language, but you can see the logic.
Yeah. When you lock yourself into those substantial monthly payments, which the sources cite as commonly ranging between, $600 and $750 a month?
Easily, sometimes more.
You are functionally trapping yourself in this cycle of perpetual debt that just never seems to end. You finally finish paying off one car.
And what happens?
The societal conditioning kicks right back in. The marketing, maybe the fear of repair costs on the older car, it pushes you immediately into the next 4 to 6 year payment cycle.
It's designed that way. And let's put a finer point on the true cost of this servitude, revisiting that opportunity cost idea we just talked about.
Okay.
If the average listener is paying, let's say, $700 a month on a car payment, which feels pretty conservative these days, and they instead invested that money maybe from age 25 to age 55, that's a 30-year time frame. Again, using let's be generous, maybe an 8% annual return.
Right.
The result is staggering.
Yeah.
We're talking about sacrificing roughly $1,050,000 in compound growth.
Wait, say that again. Over $1 million?
Over $1 million in potential future wealth, just for the temporary ego boost and, the new car smell every few years.
That is mind-blowing, just for the privilege of driving a new vehicle.
Precisely. The real treason against personal autonomy, in this view, isn't just the depreciation itself. It's that massive 6-figure, sometimes 7-figure investment opportunity cost you give up. The author's argument is that the cultural illusion, the idea that upgrading your vehicle is a mark of success, is maybe the most effective tool the financial system uses to maintain middle-class dependence.
But the sources offer a practical alternative, right? It's not just critique. This grounds the rebellion in reality.
Absolutely. The author doesn't suggest you need to ride a bike everywhere or own some total scrap heap.
Okay.
No, they drive a reliable and, crucially, fully paid for 2007 Toyota Camry.
A Camry. Okay. Reliable workhorse.
Exactly. And this example clarifies the distinction for the listener. The car serves purely as transport. It performs its function perfectly well and cheaply. It's not serving as a trophy of ego or some mobile advertisement for temporary status.
That mindset shift is absolutely crucial then. We are culturally trained, like you said, to view the new car purchase as an achievement.
A milestone, even.
Yeah, a milestone. But the rebellion flips that entirely. If the item is rapidly depreciating and requires continuous financing, it's not an achievement, It's a burden.
A liability, full stop.
You're paying a huge premium for that new car smell and the temporary ego boost, neither of which contributes a single penny toward your long-term independence or peace of mind.
So rejecting the car payment is perhaps the loudest, most concrete declaration of sovereignty a person can make against the prevailing consumer culture. It frees up enormous financial and mental resources.
Okay, so if the first point was about liberating your transportation expenses, the next logical step is liberating your image, right? Moving from functional transport to personal presentation. This means challenging status-driven consumption. The designer clothes, the expensive jewelry, those high-end sneakers everyone seems to want, luxury watches.
Oh, that stuff, yeah.
The sources argue that this category of spending is maybe the quickest way to look successful while actually being financially fragile.
That's the core critique right there. Society actively encourages people, sometimes pushes them, to appear wealthy rather than to actually be wealthy.
Appear wealthy versus be wealthy.
Exactly. And the author has this phrase that just cuts right to the bone. People are often financially drowning, but looking good doing it.
Ouch. That's blunt.
It is, but it captures that performance aspect of wealth. It's a wildly expensive subscription to maintain, constantly chasing the latest fashion cycle, the newest status markers, just to keep up an external narrative.
Is there like behavioral economics behind that? Why do we do it?
Oh, definitely. The thinking is that we use these external markers, especially the high-cost, really visible ones, to signal to our peers that we're high status, or at least successful, competent.
Signaling.
Yeah, it's all signaling.
Yeah.
But that signal is entirely dependent on the perception of others, which is, fleeting. It requires constant upkeep, constant spending.
And the counter-declaration from this rebellion philosophy is powerful because it's so simple. The author states, quite directly, I'm not dressing for validation.
Boom. Right there.
The source material argues true wealth isn't something you wear. It's something fundamentally internal, owned quietly, protected intentionally.
It resides in your balance sheet, not your wardrobe.
Okay, I have to challenge the sources a bit here, though. While that philosophy of quiet wealth is really appealing, isn't completely rejecting status symbols may be unrealistic in certain professional fields.
That's a fair point. Go on.
Well, fields where presentation is genuinely seen as key to perceived competency, maybe high-level sales, certain client-facing roles. Is the author inadvertently suggesting we trade the status of wealth for a new kind of status, the sort of moral superiority of radical simplicity?
That's a really fair nuance to bring in, and it lets us refine the point. The rebellion isn't demanding that you show up to a board meeting in rags. It's about eliminating consumption, driven purely by validation or perceived status enhancement, beyond what's functionally necessary. So, if a certain level of professional presentation, a well-fitting suit, clean shoes, is genuinely required for your career, okay, that becomes a necessary cost of doing business, maybe even an investment in your career capital.
An investment, okay.
But the minute you upgrade from that perfectly functional tailored suit to, say, a bespoke $8,000 designer suit simply to impress your peers or signal extreme wealth,
Right.
that's where the rebellion draws the line. That's ego, not necessity.
Got it. The distinction is the motive.
Exactly. The motive. Is it functional or is it purely for show and validation? True wealth, according to the author's definition here, is owned quietly. It's held in appreciating assets, reflected in deliberate, measured financial decisions. And most importantly, it manifests as sustained peace of mind. When you're genuinely financially secure, you don't need the external signals to confirm your value. Your value is secured by your assets, your independence, your lack of debt.
That makes sense. The need for the signal decreases as the underlying reality increases.
Precisely. And this whole concept of mastering external appearances, not being ruled by them, leads us directly to that implied connection with Stoic principles that you can feel running through the sources.
Stoicism. Okay, tell me more.
Well, we're talking about core Stoic ideas,
Okay.
the pursuit of profound simplicity, gaining mastery over your own desires rather than being driven by them, and achieving independence from the relentless, shifting opinions of the marketplace and your peer group.
Independence from opinion, that's hard.
It's incredibly hard. But if your ultimate goal is internal peace, relying on external validation is a profound strategic weakness. It essentially gives the world, the advertisers, your neighbors, perpetual leverage over your emotional state and your financial state.
Okay, so what's the consequence then, according to the sources, of continuing to chase status?
The argument is blunt and clear. Status, the appearance of it, does not pay your bills. It does not buy you actual peace of mind, and it absolutely does not grant you freedom. Spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars on something purely for its perceived status value is framed as a direct sabotage of your own path to autonomy. It often leaves the individual with the debt burden, but none of the actual security or peace they were probably seeking in the first place.
So the rebellion aims to just stop that self-sabotage immediately, cut it off at the source.
Stop digging the hole deeper, exactly.
Okay. So if we've declared independence from debt financing our transportation and debt financing our ego, we now shift focus to lifestyle consumption.
The fun stuff.
Fun stuff. Those experiences we feel we're owed or deserve and often end up financing. Section 3 addresses escaping lifestyle debt and also that massive trap of planned obsolescence.
And we absolutely have to begin with the financing of experiences, which has become, I think, one of the most socially acceptable and potentially damaging forms of debt today.
Why, damn it.
Because it feels so justifiable. But the source material is brutally honest here. It refers to luxury vacations, especially those financed by high-interest credit cards, as nothing more than a financial hangover.
Financial hangover. That phrase perfectly encapsulates the feeling, doesn't it?
It really does.
You experience maybe 2 weeks of high-end luxury. Maybe you drop $10,000 you don't quite have.
Right. Put on the card.
And then you spend the next 12, 18 months, maybe longer, paying not just the principal back, but maybe $1,500, $2,000 in interest on that fleeting enjoyment. The memory is nice, but the financial drain is real and present.
And it weighs on you.
Yeah, and the sources specifically critique the common justification we use for these trips. People often rationalize costly travel under the guise of mental health or self-care.
Oh, that's a big one now. I need this for my mental health.
Right. But the counterargument from the rebellion is really piercing. Peace cannot genuinely be bought on an exotic beach if, deep down, that a pile of unpaid bills and rapidly accumulating high-interest debt are actively growing and waiting for you back home.
The stress just follows you, doesn't it? It undermines the whole point.
Exactly. So this is the crux of redefining what luxury truly means within this philosophy. True luxury, according to the rebellion's tenets, is peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's built on genuine, zero-debt financial security. A temporary escape bought on credit is like a temporary narcotic. It feels good briefly, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem of financial instability.
The destination becomes almost irrelevant if the foundation of your financial life is unstable and riddled with those interest payments.
And think about the math, too. Financing a trip on a credit card can be far more costly than even financing a car, right? Because of the interest rates?
Whoa, exponentially different. A car loan might hover around, 6-10% these days, maybe a bit more. But credit card debt for a vacation, that's often 20%, 25%, even hitting 30% APR.
That's insane.
It is. And the psychological pressure of servicing that kind of high-interest debt actively negates any perceived relaxation benefit you might have gotten from the trip itself. You come back more stressed about money than when you left.
So what's the alternative proposed? Just never travel?
No, not at all. The sources advocate for an old-fashioned virtue that feels almost revolutionary now. Patience.
Patience. Okay.
The requirement for indulgence, they argue, should be self-discipline. You save the money first, you pay in cash, and then you indulge. This links patience directly to long-term freedom. It reframes delayed gratification not as suffering, but as an active, deliberate step toward liberation.
So waiting isn't deprivation, it's strategy.
Exactly. When you pay cash for that trip, it doesn't leave a lingering financial hangover. It's a clean transaction. And that emotional clarity, the knowledge that you earned it, you paid for it, you owe nothing for it, that's the real enduring luxury. The rebellion champions the idea that waiting, say, 2 extra years to save up and pay cash for your dream vacation is infinitely superior in terms of life quality to going tomorrow and spending the next 2 years stressed out paying 25% interest on it.
That makes a lot of sense. And this debt trap isn't just limited to vacations, is it? It extends to that endless cyclical pressure for technological novelty. Consumer electronics. The source material calls this the upgrade trap.
Oh, yeah. This point is a powerful critique of corporate marketing strategy, focused squarely on planned obsolescence. We should probably unpack that term a little further, listener.
Please do.
Okay, so basically, there are 2 main types of obsolescence that companies, arguably, rely on to keep us on that consumer treadmill. First, you have physical or functional obsolescence. This is where the product is literally built with non-durable components, or designed in a way that makes repairs difficult or impossible. It's engineered to fail or significantly slow down after a predictable time, forcing a genuine replacement.
Okay, things actually breaking.
Right. But second, and perhaps far more insidious, is perceived or marketing-driven obsolescence. This is where your perfectly functional product, your phone, your laptop, is deliberately made to feel inadequate or outdated.
How do they do that?
Simply because a new model is released, maybe it has a minor aesthetic change, a slightly different color, or one additional, often niche feature that you probably won't even use much. But the marketing tells you your current one is now old news.
So, as consumers trying to practice this rebellion, how do we tell the difference? How do we know if an upgrade is a genuine technological improvement that actually increases our efficiency versus just this marketing-driven perceived obsolescence designed to drain our wallets?
The author suggests a really simple litmus test. The focus must remain solely on functionality over novelty. Does the thing still do the job you need it to do?
Functionality over novelty.
Exactly. The author's specific example drives this home beautifully. I don't need another lens on my camera. If the tool you currently own, your phone, your computer, your camera, still performs the core job you need it to do, efficiently and reliably, then the need for the upgrade is almost certainly manufactured by external pressure, by marketing.
So if my 5-year-old laptop still runs the programs I need for work and life,
Then buying a new one simply because it boots up 3 seconds faster or has a slightly brighter screen is seen as financially treacherous within this philosophy. You're spending hundreds, maybe thousands for a marginal gain while ignoring the massive opportunity cost of not investing that money.
and this upgrade trap isn't just about hardware anymore either, is it? It's also about that feeling of subscription fatigue that modern life almost mandates.
Oh, absolutely. That's a crucial modern extension of the upgrade trap.
We're constantly paying monthly fees for software, for streaming services, for app upgrades that maybe add tiny incremental features. It just solidifies this continuous revenue stream for corporations from us.
That's a really important point. The rebellion argues that you have to audit your digital life with the same ruthlessness you audit your physical purchases. Ask yourself, are you paying $15 a month for 3 different streaming services when you only really watch one of them?
Guilty.
Right. Are you paying $10 a month for premium features on some app that you maybe use once every 3 weeks? These small recurring payments are specifically designed to be forgotten. They fly under the radar.
Death by thousand cuts.
Precisely. They act as thousands of tiny holes in your financial independence ship, slowly sinking it, without you even noticing the big leaks.
This is why the decision of not upgrading is reframed in the sources as a conscious, almost political, and truly rebellious act.
It really is. When you refuse to participate in that cycle, when you keep using your slightly older phone or computer because it still works perfectly fine, or when you cancel that subscription, you barely use well. You are intentionally opting out of that consumer conditioning.
You're declaring something.
You're declaring that your wealth, your time, your future freedom are more valuable to you than corporate profit margins or keeping up with the Joneses tech.
It's a massive psychological shift then, isn't it? You move from potentially feeling shame or like being left behind for owning older technology to feeling empowered and sovereign for choosing functionality and efficiency over chasing some fleeting novelty.
That feeling of empowerment is the true currency of the Buy Nothing Rebellion, I think. It's taking back agency.
Okay, we've covered the major financial anchors, the cars, the status items, and those persistent life cycle costs of upgrades and financed luxuries. Now we transition to maybe the smallest, but perhaps most insidious costs that erode financial health daily.
The daily grind expenses.
Exactly. The daily expenses we incur often for pure convenience. Section 4 focuses on reclaiming self-reliance and refusing to pay what the author calls the convenience tax.
This section of the source material is arguably the most confrontational because it directly challenges daily habits that many of us have completely internalized as normal, maybe even necessary.
Like what?
Well, the author's critique regarding modern food consumption, particularly food delivery, is extremely blunt. Essentially, stop paying extra for convenience simply out of laziness.
Oof. Laziness. That's direct.
It is. The sources define this excessive, voluntary costs, the delivery fees, the service charges, the inflated menu prices sometimes. The tip says lazy inflation.
Lazy inflation. I like that term.
It's memorable, isn't it? It's not the economic inflation caused by, supply chains or government policy. It's the voluntary premium you choose to pay just to avoid a little bit of friction or effort.
Paying a premium for the sheer privilege of doing less.
Exactly. Even when the food source might literally be within easy walking distance, or the meal could be made with maybe 15 minutes of preparation at home.
Let's try to quantify this lazy inflation like we did with the car. How much could it actually cost someone?
Okay, let's run some rough numbers. If you order delivery, say, 3 times a week, which might be low for some people.
Could be.
And each order, including all those fees and tips, averages maybe a $12 premium over the cost of just picking it up yourself or cooking something similar at home.
$12 extra each time.
Okay, that's $36 a week. Over a year, that is $1,872.
Wow. Nearly $2,000.
Almost $2,000, permanently lost from your wealth-building potential, purely paid as a tax on avoiding minor effort. Now take that $1,872 and invest it consistently. It could easily compound into a 5-figure sum over a decade or so.
When you look at the cost that way, it's pretty devastating, actually. It's money that has just been permanently funneled away from your future security and into momentary, often impulse-driven satisfaction.
And the author argues that this consistent avoidance of friction, this paying extra to avoid small efforts, isn't just a small character flaw, it's a symptom of a deeper dependency.
Dependency on what?
Dependency on ease. The constant desire for instant gratification, packaged and sold to us as convenience, gradually erodes our self-sufficiency muscle. If you feel you can't even manage the small, controllable act of preparing or picking up your own food consistently, how can you expect to muster the discipline needed to master the larger forces of global finance, career development, or long-term investment strategy? It signals, even just to yourself, a slight lack of self-mastery.
That's a challenging thought. And what's particularly challenging is the author's ultimate, almost philosophical call for autonomy in this area. They issue this really extreme challenge.
Yeah, this one gets people's attention.
Grow your own food or get your own food.
Right. It's provocative.
Now, I have to assume the author is using that mainly as a powerful metaphor for self-sufficiency, rather than a literal mandate for everyone to suddenly become, a full-time urban farmer.
Oh, absolutely. It's rhetorical dynamite.
Because for most people, the time and resources required to actually grow a significant amount of their own food might actually exceed the financial cost savings, right?
Precisely. It's meant to shock the listener into recognizing their own dependencies, however small.
Oh.
It completes the cycle of reclaiming self-reliance in the most fundamental daily act, feeding oneself. It's about taking responsibility for the entire chain of necessity as much as reasonably possible. It's not necessarily about literally becoming a farmer, but about prompting the question, wait, why am I paying a stranger extra money to drive me a burrito that I could have walked 2 blocks to get myself in 5 minutes?
So it's about questioning the automatic outsourcing of basic life tasks.
Exactly. Questioning the default. However, the sources are fair. They do acknowledge that there are legitimate exceptions.
All right, good.
The author briefly concedes that convenience obviously has a necessary and valuable function when genuine physical constraints are involved for people who are sick, elderly, or have real mobility issues.
Of course.
But for the average healthy person, that convenience fee is framed purely as a tax on optional laziness, a tax they must consciously choose not to pay if they want to reclaim that little piece of sovereignty.
So if we connect this refusal to pay the convenience tax back to the bigger picture of the rebellion, this daily act of self-reliance, like cooking or walking to the store, is yet another vote for autonomy, just on a micro level.
Absolutely. It reinforces the larger goal. By cooking, preparing, or walking to get your own food, you are not only saving potentially significant money over time and often improving your health,
True.
but you are, perhaps most importantly, signaling to yourself that you are fully in control of meeting your own basic needs. You are not just a passive recipient of paid services dictated by some third-party app on your phone.
You're acting as the sovereign authority over your own existence, even in small ways.
That's the idea. Every act counts.
Okay, we've thoroughly synthesized the 5 core areas of the Buy Nothing rebellion. Rejecting major vehicle debt, rejecting financial fragility driven by status symbols, rejecting debt-financed temporary escapes, rejecting the continuous expense of the upgrade trap, and rejecting convenience inflation. Now, let's move to our final section, pulling the overarching philosophical meaning from this entire body of source material. What does it all add up to?
Well, when you distill all these actions, the no's, down to their core intent, the entire philosophy seems to rest on 3 really tightly interlocked pillars: discipline, freedom, and intentional living.
Discipline, freedom, intentional living.
Yeah. The discipline is the required mechanism, the how. The intentional living is the daily practice, the what. And the freedom is the ultimate resulting state of being, the why. Without that rigorous discipline applied consistently to every purchasing decision, big or small, the freedom described here is simply impossible to achieve.
And that key metaphor that underpins the whole movement, The idea of voting for autonomy. Let's revisit that again, maybe with a deeper understanding now of the cumulative impact.
Right. It's powerful. Every single dollar withheld from what the author deems meaningless consumption, every conscious no to the upgrade, the delivery fee, the status symbol, is framed as a strategic vote for your personal independence.
It transforms saving from being this passive, maybe boring activity
Yeah, like something you should do.
into a tangible, active, daily practice of literally building your future freedom, brick by brick.
And this is where the rebellion becomes a truly comprehensive critique of modern culture. It's fighting against a dominant narrative that, according to the sources, systematically confuses activity with progress and spending with success. We are conditioned to feel that because we're constantly busy, constantly working, constantly buying, we must be advancing somehow.
But the rebellion argues you might just be moving sideways.
Or worse, running faster and faster just to stay in the same place on what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. You get a raise, you spend more, your baseline happiness maybe resets, and you're no better off emotionally, just deeper in consumption.
So how do the sources suggest we measure true progress then, if not by income or spending?
They suggest true progress is measured by increasing your distance from financial necessity and debt, by increasing your autonomy. Ask yourself, how many months could you comfortably survive without working, relying only on your assets?
That's a stark metric.
It's a very telling metric of your actual financial success, far more telling, they argue, than the brand of car you drive or the cost of the watch on your wrist.
And if we link this back to, say, behavioral finance, it seems the rebellion is proposing a life philosophy that actively tries to eliminate those emotional and cognitive biases.
It is that.
Like FOMO, fear of missing out, or that powerful desire for immediate gratification that relentlessly leads so many people into poor spending habits and debt accumulation.
It's about intentionally creating a default setting of restraint, of questioning, rather than a default setting of automatic consumption. Pause before you purchase.
And the sources suggest there's a psychological benefit, too.
Huge. The success of the rebellion is psychological before it's financial, in many ways. By consciously removing the pressure to constantly consume, to keep up, you free up enormous amounts of mental bandwidth.
How so?
Think about it. You're no longer spending hours researching the next big purchase, comparing models, worrying about affording the payments, dealing with debt anxiety. That regained mental clarity, that peace, that is presented as the real payoff, even more than the money saved.
That freedom from mental clutter. Okay. The power and clarity of this whole philosophy are really beautifully captured in the author's concluding creed, which you highlighted earlier. It feels like the synthesis of every principle we've discussed.
It really is. And it's worth spending a moment with this quote again because it perfectly reframes the perceived difficulty of the movement. Every time I say no to something that doesn't build my wealth, I'm saying yes to the life I actually want.
That reframing is everything, isn't it? It takes the perceived sacrifice, the saying no to the new car, the expensive delivery, the status watch, and turns it completely on its head. It becomes an affirmation, a saying yes to a higher, more desired goal, that life you actually want, presumably one with more peace, freedom, and autonomy.
It makes the seemingly restrictive choice the only rational path towards the desired outcome. It aligns your daily actions with your deepest values.
So this philosophy, this rebellion, it's characterized ultimately as a kind of stoic, minimalist, and deeply rational creed.
I think that sums it up well. It finds genuine wealth not in accumulation, but in simplicity. It locates human dignity not in display, but in restraint and self-mastery. And it recognizes that true serenity, that deep peace of mind, can only really be achieved through sustained financial independence from consumer pressures and debt. The rebellion is fundamentally an internal movement, prioritizing the substance of financial health over the external, fleeting display of material goods.
It sounds like a fundamentally rational path back to a certain kind of dignity.
Exactly. The dignity that comes from knowing you are in complete control of your choices, and that your life's direction is being set by your own deepest internal values.
Not by corporate marketing pressures, not by the expectations of your peers, and certainly not by the urgent demands of monthly debt obligations.
That's the liberation it promises.
Okay, that brings our deep dive into the Buy Nothing Rebellion to a close. We have meticulously unpacked the philosophy, analyzed the often staggering opportunity costs associated with those 5 major areas of financial revolt, and synthesized the core creed of discipline, intentional living, and the pursuit of autonomy. Now, connecting this knowledge back to you, the listener, How does this deep, maybe even confronting rational analysis inform your very next spending decision? When you inevitably encounter that pressure, maybe later today, maybe tomorrow, the pressure to upgrade your phone or opt for the easy but expensive convenience of food delivery, will you recognize that moment differently now?
Will you see it as a chance to cast a powerful, conscious, long-term vote for your own financial sovereignty?
That's the question.
And if true freedom really is measured by peace of mind, and the elimination of optional debt and the sources we explore today strongly suggest that is indeed the case, then maybe we should all be scrutinizing our daily lives a bit more closely. Think about it. What single, perhaps small, debt-inducing convenience or low-level status symbol are you currently paying for? Maybe purely out of habit or inertia or that fear of missing out.
Just one thing.
Just one thing. Could conquering that one small habit, starting today, be the first conscious, meaningful act of rebellion you make this week? Could it be the first step that moves you, perhaps irrevocably, toward the life you truly want?
That is definitely a provocative thought to mull over as you navigate your spending choices this week. We hope this deep dive arms you with not just the knowledge, but maybe also the inspiration and the discipline necessary to move towards genuine financial freedom.
Until next time, keep thinking critically about what you own, and perhaps more importantly, what owns you.